All right, good afternoon again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. It's April 9th, 2006. We are live. This is a live call-in public access program providing atheists the opportunity to speak to the community, and the community the opportunity to call in, ask questions, and have conversations. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road. Those are begin at 11:30 every Sunday, except for the third Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center. This month's lecture will actually be on the fourth Sunday of the month. The Austin History Center is located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe, and the lectures begin at 12:30. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors an internet audio program broadcast bi-weekly. We did a show yesterday. It's called The Nonprofits. It's hosted by Jeff D., co-hosted by Dennis Lubay, features Russell Glasser and myself. And yesterday's show was live, so it'll be live again in 2 weeks, which would be the 22nd, I think. We got preempted last week by a half hour. We got preempted this week through some technical difficulties, so thanks for hanging with us, and welcome back. Special welcome to those of you who are listening via MP3 download or podcast. Information on downloading the program or the podcasts, and as well as DVDs and other methods of listening to it are available at the ACA website, www.atheist-community.org. It's right up there above my head, and it'll be on the screen a few times. In addition to the lecture and the two programs, the ACA also sponsors a number of social events, and one of those, for example, on Thursdays, we have Atheist Happy Hour, which is currently being held at Ninfa's on Anderson near 183 I-35. It's on the access road there. That's Thursday night at 7:30. Any atheist or atheist-friendly people are welcome to come down, have some drinks, dinner, conversation, meet some of the ACA members. Also, after this program's over and we go off the air at 6 o'clock, we've been going to dinner, all the cast and crew, as well as we're inviting viewers to come down and join us as well, at Threadgill's on Riverside. The show's off at 6 o'clock. We normally get there between 6:30 and 6:45. And as with all of our other events, any atheist or atheist-friendly people are welcome to attend. You don't have to be a member, but if you're coming down to preach or proselytize, just hang on. We'll have the telephone number up for you shortly. You can call in and do that here, and that's one of the reasons that we have the show in the first place. When we're actually at a dinner, we'd rather not be preached at. Another quick reminder. The elections for the Atheist Community of Austin Board of Directors, including the new president, vice president positions, will be held March 7th. More information about that is available in the member section of the ACA website. And for anybody who doesn't manage to get through on the telephone or doesn't want to get through on the telephone, you can always email tv@atheist-community.org, and that email goes to all the cast and crew of the show, and we try to answer as best we can any reasonable question. And you can also provide feedback and suggestions as to what we might add on future shows or topics we can cover. It's supposed to be Jeff D. today joining us, but Jeff couldn't make it today, and Tracie Harris agreed to fill in. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, she's been on the show before, and we're glad to have her back, and I think you got something quickly you wanted to cover?
Yeah, just a brief thing. On Friday nights 2020, they had a woman on who had given birth to twins with congenital heart defects. Both the twins needed new hearts within 6 months. And one of the mother of the twins said that she believed in miracles, and meanwhile the hospital was working overtime to keep the babies alive and to find an organ donor, which entailed a baby that would die that would be around the same age as the twins, or one of the twins. And when the baby died, I'm assuming that's the miracle that she was waiting for, was someone else's baby would die. And then the doctor who had attended medical school and understood how to do surgery, that would be another miracle, I guess, that he went and learned surgery and his skill is just a miracle. And so they did the surgery on one of the babies, and the woman whose baby had died, who was the organ donor, said that she believed God had a plan for her child, that this was God's plan for her child. And I thought that that was kind of an odd plan to have a couple babies born with congenital heart defects so that you could then kill another baby and then harvest that baby's organs to then put into other babies that, for I guess whatever reasons, were more valuable to God or in God's plan. and then that baby can just die, and these other babies can live, and that's the wonderful miracle that God produced for her. I just kind of missed, I guess, both these mothers' points, because to me, I saw babies born with congenital heart defects. I saw a doctor who had surgical training. I saw someone else's baby die, and I kind of wondered, in that, where was the miracle? Yeah, her baby survived, but to me it was like completely explainable by surgery.
Right. You know, the traditional definition of miracle being something which defies natural law.
Right.
And then there's like the colloquial miracle, which is something which defies the odds. You know?
Right.
This is so astronomically improbable that we're just going to go ahead and call it a miracle, even though it's possible by nature. But in this case, you have neither.
Right.
You know, babies are born and die all the time. People get disease all the time. There are plenty of doctors. Medical science has progressed nicely. There's nothing here that's even remotely out of the ordinary.
Right. Right. And how many babies died that didn't match the donor qualifications? I mean, you know, the fact that one of them did is hardly a miracle. I mean, it's happy news for the person whose baby is dying.
Sure.
But happy news isn't a miracle.
Right. We can go ahead and put the number up and start taking phone calls. We got a few more news items to go through as well. And if you want to talk about miracles or any of the other topics that we bring up, feel free to call in. As a reminder, there's also the email, tv@atheist-community.org. So yeah, you know, how many times do we hear it's a miracle, and this was a miracle, and you know, you had the miners not too long ago who, when people thought they were all going to come out alive, that was a miracle, and of course, when they didn't, that kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit last week about that study on the efficacy of prayer and whether or not it helps. And I mentioned this yesterday on Nonprofits, that there's some feedback from different people basically respinning the whole thing. Is this, you shouldn't have had this study is irrelevant. You know, one of the guys was saying his first excuse was that the people who were praying for the sick had no real connection to them. There needs to be a personal connection, you know, in order for their prayers to mean something, which to me read like, if you don't have a personal relationship with somebody, you can't possibly care about them enough to pray for them, or your prayers actually matter.
Well, that invalidates a number of Christians who believe in prayer groups.
Right.
That pray for all sorts of international issues.
Pray for the world.
And, yeah. I mean, it may be that that's their view, and that maybe presents the view of a lot of Christians, but there's a whole lot of other Christians who believe that you can pray for things that you're not personally attached to, and it can have an effect.
Right. That was actually the idea behind his second kind of ad hoc explanation for why this didn't work out. And it was, well, what do we know about these people who were picked to do the praying? Do they really know how to pray properly? Are they true Christians?
Well, Jesus said you only need the faith of a mustard seed and you can move a mountain. So it wouldn't take the most righteous person in the world to be able to help somebody that was already had a surgery for a heart condition that should recover.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like they were asking anybody to move a mountain. So even a Christian with the smallest faith should have had an impact on a heart patient.
Yep.
Yeah.
So after those two excuses, his third big excuse was that, or kind of sidetrack, it's not even an excuse, was that maybe the real prayers of the real true believers prompted modern medicine to develop heart bypass procedures and better medical. He's taking credit for science. All these, these people in the prayer study weren't real Christians or didn't know how to pray. But the real Christians who have been praying, they're the ones who we need to thank for all the advances in modern science.
Which is a whole other sidetrack, but I mean, anytime science validates anything that's in the Bible, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And then when science says that something's not right, then, well, science is not right and science is wrong and there's so much wrong with science. And it's like, well, how is it? It's like, this happens all the time, like with the prayer study. Whenever you have something that supports a Christian idea, then they take it as such a positive thing and proof of their doctrine. But when something is shown to have an opposite effect, like with the prayer study, they said if there had been a huge increase in people getting better that were prayed for, you'd have never heard the end of it. That study would have been on every Christian website in every, other
studies that had results that appeared to show that prayer was effective. Christians and apologist sites and everything else were touting that, like, aha, here we have, science has finally shown, don't you believe us now? And then when you go back and look, and the methodology behind those studies was found to be faulty, and in some cases the actual data was faked, for the study, then those studies kind of fall by the wayside.
Yeah, but I mean, if it goes their way, they're all over it, and if it doesn't go their way, then it's completely meaningless and has no impact. And I think the example I posted on the list was whenever the Hebrews won a battle, it was because they were righteous and God was with them.
Right.
When they lost a battle, it wasn't because the other guy's God was with them and because they were righteous. It was because the Hebrews were wicked and God was punishing them. So no matter what happened, they only would view it through the paradigm of their God and their righteousness. There was never, ever a thought to the idea that the other guy's God had more power, and that's why they won the war.
Well, that would have been kind of heretical, I would think.
Well, sure it would.
Yeah.
But that's the point. It's like it's a heresy to even consider that, that the same argument would apply to another nation that you're applying to your own nation, and it's sort of hypocritical.
There was that one exception, of course, where the reason they lost was because God simply wasn't powerful enough to defeat chariots made of iron.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is how I actually came up with the name for one of my websites. But there have been a lot of excuses made on behalf of the study, and one guy who this really baffled me yesterday, and I'll just read the first part of this so you can see what I'm talking about. He's writing an article about this prayer study and why maybe this prayer study shouldn't have been done, why the results, this whole thing about you're not able to scientifically quantify God, etc. And yet his article begins, in the mid-'60s, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, an avowed atheist and former member of the American Socialist Party, became a primary instrument in the banning of prayer in public schools. And he goes on for 2 paragraphs about Madalyn Murray O'Hair and American atheists, and even wonders if, because of course their bodies were found, and he wonders if they prayed, during their last moments. And then he finishes up those first 2.5 paragraphs by saying, of course, Madalyn Murray O'Hair has nothing to do with this latest bout of idiocy regarding prayer. Then why on earth did you spend 2.5 paragraphs tying all this in? Obviously, it's not even enough to spin. You've got to do your spin and denigrate somebody else in the process.
Well, but it is sort of relevant because if she died and we know prayer's not effective, she may have prayed. Maybe she was praying for her life. Maybe she had a change of heart, and God just killed her anyway.
They made a similar point on the Daily Show the other day when they were talking about how in this particular study, of the people who were prayed for and also knew they were being prayed for, they had a slightly higher rate of complications, which some have humorously said that maybe prayer is harmful to your health, and the Surgeon General may have to put a warning on prayer. And the Daily Show did a bit where they showed President Bush standing up there saying, and I take comfort in knowing that there's millions of people praying for me every day. It's kind of a way to explain what may or may not have gone wrong. But it's, I don't know, this whole thing kind of goes back to this idea of a self-reinforcing delusion, the concept that no matter what happens, it's God's will and God must be right. So if you are sick and you pray and you get better, God did it.
Right.
And if you're sick and you pray and you don't get better, then God didn't want you to get better, and that's just fine too.
Right.
So,
which to me is the doctrine of crap happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, if that's basically the extent of God's involvement in your life, then it's no different than just my life, which things just happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what you're saying. I get sick and sometimes I get better and sometimes I don't. Well, you get sick, you pray, and sometimes you get better and sometimes you don't. So what's the difference?
Yeah. My one of the takes that I had on it the other day was, if their God's actually omniscient, then there's no point in praying.
Right.
Because he already knows what you're going to ask for anyway. And if he's only going to do things according to his will, then there's no point in praying, because it doesn't matter what you ask for, he's going to do what he wants. And if prayer continues to have no greater effect on reality than we would expect from random chance, then again, there's no point in praying. And it all goes back to the whole idea that, it's just not, there's no validity there.
Well, I mean, I will go ahead and just, like, on behalf of some of the Christians that don't agree with it, there are some Christians who don't accept intercessory prayer, and that they look at prayer as either a means to sort of ask God for strength to sort of get through a thing, or maybe they say that it helps me because I focus on these things. And some Christians do see it more as like a meditation for themselves.
Right.
And that's a little bit different. So I just want to make sure that people understand we're talking about intercessory prayer and the Christians that believe in intercessory prayer. It is sort of a weird belief system.
Yeah. And in the example that I came up with the other day, as far as how they managed to rationalize all this, is that, it's remembering the hits and forgetting the misses, or rationalizing the misses. If, for example, if I gave you a 6-sided die and said, roll this die every day, and if your belief is strong and pure, you'll roll a 4. Every time you roll a 4, you're going to be convinced that your belief was pure, which will strengthen your belief, which you think will make it roll 4s more often. But the thing is, for true believers, this kind of rationalization comes along where if you roll a 2, well, that's halfway to 4. I just need to believe a little harder.
Right.
And if you roll a 3 or 5, you just barely missed it. Your belief's almost right on track, so you're still, it's still playing out in your favor. And on the rare occasion, or which is going to happen, where you roll several 4s in a row, boy, that just spirals up your belief. When in reality, all you're seeing is chance. Nothing out of the ordinary at all.
Sure.
We'll go ahead and start taking a couple callers. We've got, is it Zen?
Yeah, you're right.
How you doing?
Hi. Well, my question was about the baby dying. How do you feel about that? Like, do you think it was God's fault?
I don't believe in
No,
God.
I don't believe in God. I think that babies die, and this baby died, and this woman chose to interpret that as a miracle that this baby died, which I think is very warped. But, if she wants to look at a baby's death as a positive thing because it helps her baby live, that's certainly her prerogative, and I certainly can understand why she would appreciate the donation of the heart.
Okay. So, you really don't believe the Lord?
I don't believe in spirits, no.
Well, I think you're lying because I can see your nose growing through the TV.
Wait, what?
Your nose was growing through the TV. We're Pinocchio. We're up here lying.
Oh, I didn't understand what he said.
We're just pretending. No, you get that kind of thing a lot, and obviously he was joking, but there's a real sentiment among some particular believers that there's no such thing as atheists. You're just denying because you have to believe in God. It's just so infused into their brains that they can't accept that somebody might not have that same belief somewhere, and suppressing it.
You don't have to be a Christian to hold that view. There's a lot of people that hold the view that no one could think anything beyond what they think. That there's people that think that gay people are lying. That really they're just straight, but they're just a little bit off track. And so there's always going to be people who I don't see it that way, and so nobody really sees it that way.
Yeah. Let's go on to is it Don?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Hi, Dan.
Oh, yeah, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Say, hey, now.
All right. So that's 2 down. We'll move on to Dave. How you doing?
It's my turn.
Okay.
Hey, first I want to say, I want you guys to come up with PowerPoint presentations on frequently asked stupid questions.
We don't have enough RAM.
So that you can just say, flip up the chart and, just say, okay, here, and just throw it in their
Just flip
face.
to
They
it.
don't even have to talk, just point to the upper left-hand corner or whatever, and then continue on.
Like the Rolodex on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
You just have the
Yeah, a
answer
little banner
Rolodex.
across the bottom of the screen, and just pop up like teleological argument. Here's your fallacy.
Yeah.
And then
That would be
There
number
you go.
12.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you only need 5 or 6, because it's always the same stuff.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Anyway, I want to know on your take on the whole Gospel of Judas thing.
I'm looking forward. I haven't seen an actual manuscript yet.
Right.
I know they're getting ready to publish it. I did some searching online. I have really been, deeply interested and fascinated with early Christian writings, and in part that led to the lecture from last month. But I did some writing on the Apocalypse of Peter and a couple other of those early Christian writings. So I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of it. It should be really interesting. That what little bit I know about it so far, I don't think it's anything which would affect modern Christianity in the least, partly because I don't think anything can. When you get down to the core fundamentalists, you're not going to find anything that's going to shake them up at all.
Right. I think it would be nice to, offer up the perspective of, like, you know, the new and improved Bible that they have now has constantly grown over the past 2,000 years, and whatever winds up being the hard, actual bulk of the new Judas, you know, writings that have come to light, you know, if they predate what we've got going on in the Bible, do you think that would be?
Yeah, I mean, I would make a prediction that basically it's going to be, Christianity's response, I'm going to guess, is going to be that this is just, that they're not going to be able to prove authorship, and that it's going to be sort of an insignificant apocalyptic writing.
Yeah, it's
or not
Gnostic.
apocryphal writing.
It's another one of the Gnostic texts that they would already dismiss as heresy.
They would say this is not God's word and it doesn't matter. But one thing I found interesting about it, and I don't really understand, I guess I don't know where it came from, the theory, but I know that in Last Temptation of Christ, the film, they used the concept of Judas as the hero, and I know that they didn't make that up for the movie, that it was utilized in the film, but they didn't produce that idea. So I was kind of surprised when they promoted this latest gospel. Because,
I hated that movie.
Well, but my point is that if this gospel is supposed to be new information, I'm kind of wondering where that idea of Judas as being in conspiracy with Jesus for the...
They didn't even whip him enough. He got away lucky.
Last Temptation of Christ? He wasn't flailed.
Oh, yeah. Mel took it easy.
No, wrong film.
You're thinking
wrong
of Passion
film.
of Christ.
Last Temptation of Christ came out like more than a decade ago, and it was...
Oh, I'm thinking of the other one. I'm thinking of that Mel Gibson.
And in The Last Temptation, they was actually picketed. Christians didn't really like that film, and one of the things that it had in it was the idea that Jesus had gone to Judas and asked him to betray him. And so that concept is not a new concept, and I'm kind of wondering where the film producers got that idea, or where that idea originated, if the information in this gospel is new.
Well, for one thing, just looking at it myself, it makes sense in a way. And I've always been kind of curious as to why a lot of Christians tend to vilify Judas and the Jews and everybody else who was involved in crucifying Jesus, if in fact his crucifixion is necessary to their salvation. I mean,
Right.
you would think that would definitely be a hero. And there's a number of traditions in the Gnostic sense which may have originally come. I would think that this text of Judas, which has been passed down and kind of hidden away, the ideas can still filter out from that.
Sure.
And the idea that Judas was acting on orders or doing what was required, it was obvious to me that somebody needed to betray him and turn him in order to fulfill this prophecy or.
I guess he could have turned himself in. I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't understand. But like I said, I'm kind of interested in where that theory spawned, if not, if this gospel is really new information.
Cool. Thanks. I was just wondering, wanted your take on it and stuff.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Dave.
Merry Christmas.
All right. I guess we got some more news bits we can get to while we're waiting on other callers. Another reminder again, for anybody who doesn't get through on the telephone, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. And for any atheist or atheist-friendly people, you're welcome to join us after the program at Threadgills on Riverside. The show's over at 6 o'clock. We normally get down there between 6:30 and 6:45. I got an amusing story that Dennis actually brought to the nonprofits yesterday. Some people think he's crazy. His wife's not exactly thrilled either, but like the biblical Noah, Dutchman Johan Huibers is steadfast in his mission. He's building an enormous working replica of Noah's Ark as a testament to his faith in the literal truth of the Bible. Townsfolk in Schagen, 45 kilometers north of Amsterdam, frequently stop by to wave hello or just gawk at the huge wooden ship that is nearing completion in the town's small harbor. Johan's Ark is calibrated to be able to pass narrowly under every bridge and through every sluice along his planned sailing route through the interior waters of the Netherlands to the country's big cities. The article about this actually has some quotes from him. As described in Genesis, Noah used gopher wood. Johan's Ark is constructed with American cedar and Norwegian pine. But Johan says, and just think, Noah did it alone, without modern tools. It's unimaginable, no? Yeah, actually it is pretty unimaginable. the sheer size of the boat. He's planning on taking this boat and sailing, I guess, around the world, or at least around part of the world, and turning it into a floating petting zoo.
Power to him. So. Make your floating petting zoo.
Good on you.
Just take good care of the animals.
Watch out for Mount Ararat.
Yeah.
We've got, is it James?
Yes, sir.
Hey, James, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
That's good. I'm real curious. Right now, I don't know whether to believe in God or not, because I had a family member that passed, and they were, everything to me, and he just took them away, and I don't know whether to believe him or not.
I would say that I don't know that people dying would be a reason to have or to not have faith. People are going to die. I mean, that's going to happen no matter what. And even if you don't believe in God, you would still lose people that you love to death. I mean, saying that I don't know whether to believe or not, and saying I'm not going to believe due to the fact that someone died or this has shaken my faith, my response would be, well, people are going to die. I mean, it's a reality of existence, and I wouldn't have my belief or non-belief in God hinge on something that is just a natural reality.
But my thing is, if you don't believe in God, where do people go when they die? I mean, because with believing God, there's heaven and hell. Do you believe in that?
No, I don't. I believe that when you die, you pretty much break down into elements, and the electricity that drove your brain dissipates, like energy dissipates, and that's kind of what happens. You sort of go back into that flow of life, like everything else that dies, and is integrated again.
Hold on, I'm confused. You say we die when our energy is gone?
Well, the energy dissipates. Energy itself cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. So when you die, you have electrical energy that is going on in your body. You have energy that, like your body gives off heat, for example. You have heat energy that you're producing. That energy is going to dissipate, and the elements that are, the solid matter that is your body is going to degenerate.
Well, my thing is, and no disrespect, but when we're talking about the Lord, we have the Bible, there's proof. But what you're talking about, no one's really heard of.
No one's ever heard of a body breaking down into its elemental parts once it's dead? Have you never heard of decomposition?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this energy you're talking about and how it dissipates and everything.
Yes, actually you do know about it. When you go to the doctor, he'll take your temperature. You give off a body temperature somewhere around 98.6 if you're a healthy human being. You're giving off heat energy. You're a mammal. Mammals give off heat energy. We produce...
Yeah, you don't need to have an attitude with me. I'm just asking the question.
Oh, I'm not upset with you. I'm just explaining that you give off heat energy as a mammal. You produce your own heat. Like a reptile, for example, doesn't produce its own body heat, so it has to stay in a warm climate.
Dallas, Texas in the bed and Oakland.
I didn't get that. Yeah. Probably best.
Thanks, James. We got, is it Charles? Hello.
I have a question. Like, what do y'all base y'all beliefs off of? I heard your last call with the guy about the energy, so
yeah.
You don't believe you have a soul?
No, I basically believe what I can observe.
What you observe?
Yeah, what I observe.
The things that you observe, where do you think these things come from, the elements that you're talking about and things of that sort?
Well, as far as I'm aware, matter can't be created or destroyed. It only changes form. I mean, that to me is a reality of physics. And so I've never seen matter created. Except that it's produced from energy, which matter can convert to energy. And you've got matter and energy sort of working in conjunction and keeping a pretty good equilibrium. So since I've never seen anything beyond that, I really don't have a concept of what would it take to produce further matter, because I've never seen it done any other way than matter and energy coming together to produce further matter, which happens all the time. I observe that, and to me that's where matter comes from. It sort of recreates itself. Like a tree, for example, would be energy producing matter.
So you believe more on the science part of this world than the
Well, I believe that science is basically observation as well. I mean, I don't think that I believe in science. I believe that science is about looking at the observable reality and trying to determine what we can learn from that. And that's fine. I think that's a valid way of looking at the world. and if you can test it, that's a good thing. It's always good to be able to verify what you believe.
But that doesn't, to me, that's not a sound doctrine. You need something more sound.
What's not sound about it?
It's just science. You have something created science. Something had to evolve from something. Matter just wasn't presented on its own. It had to come from somewhere.
Have you ever seen matter produced in any other way beyond energy and matter coming together to form different matter?
See, that's not sound enough. So you don't believe, where do you believe you're going to go when you die?
I believe that the energy dissipates and that the matter goes back into other matter and changes form. I mean, you can observe that.
And that's just it. You don't have to answer to any God or anyone.
I'm kind of wondering where you would observe that. Since that
that's the whole point of God. You got to believe it. He says that in his Bible, that you must believe it by faith. If you're waiting for a sign, then you will always be lost. But until you believe it by faith in the death of Jesus Christ, you'll be always in this state.
If I told you that aliens abducted me and took me to Florida and we went to Disneyland and had a good time, would you just believe me, or would you expect me to prove that to you?
But it's never been preached. I never heard of anything. I'm a Bible believer. I believe in.
I understand.
I believe in Jesus.
I understand. I'm just
trying to see where you're going. It's something has to evolve from something. Something has to create some matter. Can't create matter.
But it does all the time.
To create matter.
Matter does create matter all the time. We see it all the time. So I'm wondering why you think that's not sound when it's completely observable.
It's just I can't lean on it. I have to believe there's a God. So you believe most people have a religion. Like I say 90% of the world has a religion. The atheist community is not that fun. It's not that great. So you believe your few percentage of people are right and everyone else is wrong, basically?
I think that's definitely possible. I don't believe that the number of people that believe a thing make it true. I mean, there's a whole lot of people that are Hindus in the world that don't believe your Bible, and that doesn't make your belief any less sound or more sound because more people believe it or don't believe it. Getting people to agree with me doesn't make me more right or less right.
Even though you believe in the atheist, whatever, but there's still hope for you as well. Jesus also died for your sins, and I believe that you still have a chance if you just have a slight chance to just try to believe on Jesus. You can come out this atheist knowledge and become real knowledge.
What about those of us like myself who were fundamentalist Christians for 20-some odd years?
Which I was as well.
You, sir?
I began to study in preparation for hopefully attending seminary at some point to kind of reaffirm my faith, and decided that if I was going to hold these beliefs and tell somebody and preach the good news of Jesus to them, then I had to have a good faith reason for and a way to explain it and everything else. And when I began studying and finding out the truth about, for example, the history of the Bible, whether or not Jesus actually existed in a historical sense, philosophical arguments about the nature of God, scientific investigation into origins, evolution, any number of things, the evidence just began to mount up. And then the question becomes, okay, in spite of all of these other things that I've studied, and in spite of what I've learned about science and philosophy and reason and critical thinking and skepticism, is there some good reason for me to think that a God actually exists? And there's not.
Well, that's foolish to me, sir. But you have your own opinion. We're entitled to our own.
I mean, if you called yourself a Bible believer and you're talking about this is just something you have to accept on faith, what is it that makes you think that accepting the Bible on faith is better than accepting the Quran on faith, or better than disregarding both?
Jesus Christ. I don't care what the Quran is based. If they're built off of Jesus Christ, then they have a chance. But the Quran, I don't have any knowledge about the Quran. There's only one true gospel. There's only one God, and there's only one Savior.
Right. Your position is that
has to be right.
I'm going to put you on hold. I'm not hanging up. Your position is that it's valid for you to believe the Bible based on faith because it's based on Jesus, who you presume is actually the Son of God. And I would say, what makes you take that initial faith position that Jesus is the Son of God? And if your answer, as I suspect it would be until I say this, is that it says so in the Bible, then you have what's called a circular argument, where you're using one thing to prop up another, which props up the first thing.
No, sir. This is the case. I believe God put the truth in some people. Not everyone's going to believe the truth. He's having an election.
Well, then, if that's what you believe, then it's not. It's God's fault I'm an atheist.
But I'm just calling to give you my opinion. Like, y'all have your opinion, I'm having my opinion. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's fair. That's why the show is
I
here.
just want to try to persuade you guys to believe on Jesus. That's what all I'm calling about, because that's the only truth. If you don't ever believe that, you're going to always believe a lie. And I believe the atheist experience is a lie. And that's just my opinion. And y'all have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. I don't know. Do you have anything to add to what he was saying?
Well, just that what I really wanted to get to with him was the idea that, does he live his life with that same attitude? That do you believe things on faith without verification? When you drive on the street and you see a red light, do you stop because you're seeing a red light? I mean, you know what that red light means, you're observing that red light, and you're behaving based on what you know about it, based on what you observe. So you're operating day to day based on your experiential verification of things. You do everything you do. You don't put your hand on a hot stove burner because you know what that hot stove burner will do to your hand. So when you experience things, when you observe things and you know them to be true, verifying them is very important. It keeps you from doing things like running red lights and putting your hands on burners. But then when it comes to the gospel, there's a lot of people who say, oh, it's wrong to ask for verification. It's wrong to want this verified. But it's like, you know what? Everything in your life you do, and you expect verification. If I come to you and I tell you an outrageous tale, you won't believe me unless I can verify it. And yet they come to you with a Bible, and they teach it to you from the time you're old enough to walk, and then by the time you're in your adulthood, you don't even question it. And you're taught that it's wrong to question this thing, that you're bad for questioning this thing, you're asking for signs, and you shouldn't be doing that. And the reality is, you know, because you live your life on verification. You know that verification for what you do is the way to live. That's how everybody lives. And
I think one of the most important things, at least for me, in figuring out what do you believe and why, is consistency. And when I talk about consistency, I'm talking about establishing standards of evidence, ways of analyzing claims which are consistent. And that doesn't mean I need the same exact amount and quality of evidence for every claim, but it does mean that I need evidence of the quality and quantity that is proportional to the type of claim.
Right.
And as long as I maintain a consistent, verifiable method or methodology in determining and evaluating claims, then I have the best chance of having a true, rational explanation of the world around me.
And like you say, the more extreme the claim, the more extreme the evidence has to be. Right. If you're asking me to believe something really far-fetched, you really need to come through with the evidence. If you're asking me to believe what you had for breakfast this morning, you could probably lie to me and I would believe what you said.
Yeah.
But if you want to tell me that I need to believe something that's going to change my entire life, you've got to come up with something more than don't ask questions.
Yeah, there's a number of things you kind of, we talked about this a little bit last time you were on, where you're training your brain by asking the right questions. Whenever you hear a claim, there's a lot of things that happen pretty much automatically, and I think one of the things that would really benefit a lot of people is if they actually sat down and considered those steps specifically, individually, and used the knowledge that they gained from doing that to help fine-tune those steps. For example, when I hear a claim, one of the things that I evaluate, consciously or not, is what do I know about the person who's making the claim? Do I know them to be reliable or unreliable? Does it seem that they may have a motivation to lie? Is it possible that they could be deluded? Then there's the actual claim itself. How does this claim compare to what I already know and accept about reality? Is it, pretty consistent? Joe just got a new pet dog. Yeah, I know that there are dogs, and I know people keep them as pets, so that's not outlandish. If you got a new pet dragon, now we're in a different category. And then you also evaluate, if I accept this claim, what do I have to change about other things that I believe? And also, if I accept this claim and I'm later shown to be wrong, what impact does that have on me?
Right.
And once you actually get used to going through those steps in your head, you can fine-tune them to the point where they're automatic, and that's where your gut instincts, which really aren't gut instincts any more than prayers come from the heart, your mind goes on autopilot, and you're training yourself to make good decisions about reality. But we've got, is it Joe?
Hello.
Zamecki.
Yes, that's me.
Hey, buddy.
Y'all have a great show, and I'm Matt. And Tracie Harris, I missed the first couple of seconds of the show. Did y'all talk about Atheist Eve?
No, but we should.
Well, Tracie Harris is a cartoonist who does Atheist Eve, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, that's great, and also you can find that on the inside cover of every issue of Atheist Community News. I'm the editor of that, by the way, and we're real glad and thankful that you've allowed us to put your cartoon in there.
Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for running it.
All right. Well, isn't it interesting how so many believers, especially Christians, really want to live forever, especially after they die, and will say that, you know, no matter what the situation is, it's going to happen. And this just, to me, says that they're in denial of the reality of their mortality. And to me, that's kind of anti-naturalistic and anti-human, in fact. What do you think about that?
I think that I tend to agree very strongly with Joseph Campbell in that regard, that yes, Christianity is a very anti-naturalistic religion. It tends to look at the world and the things of the world as evil and not good, and that you should separate yourself from the world, and you should avoid the drives, the innate animal drives that people have. You need to keep a handle on that. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating total hedonism. I'm just saying that it is a whole lot of denial of the natural. And yeah, Joseph Campbell has a lot to say about that, and in comparison with other more naturalistic religions. And I tend to lean toward the idea that it does take man out of the natural world and put him kind of separated from that. And I'm not sure how healthy that is, especially as technology progresses, for us to have that attitude that we're not part of this world.
Right.
Well, also, I noticed that one caller, a couple callers ago, had a little trouble understanding the idea that when we die, life energy does pass on. It's not in the way of a soul.
Right.
And it's not detached from our body. When we die, our body breaks down, like you said, and you put it so well. But I think what they need to be educated about is the fact that there's a lot of life energy in each body, and when we die, it goes and it does help other organisms, which eventually help other organisms, and so on, and
Right.
connected back to the cycle of life.
Right, and what I was trying to get to was the idea of, you plant this tiny acorn seed, it grows in this giant tree. Well, that's a whole lot of matter being produced. It's not really being produced from nothing, it's just changing form into a tree from other elements in the ground, light from the sun, energy and matter comes together, and it produces new matter. You see new matter being, well, I hate to say new matter, you see matter changing form all the time in the universe, on the planet. It happens consistently, but you never see new matter sort of just made out of anything beyond a combination of energy and other matter. So the idea of, just a complete void from which matter is produced, that's something that is sort of, I tend to ask people, where are you getting this? I mean, I understand that you've got this Genesis idea, which, by the way, is not, that has its own little history of problems in that there was like a tradition of emanation among Clement and Origen, that God was just sort of outputting himself and that the universe was just God, or, part of God. The idea of producing matter from nothing was not always how Genesis was interpreted. So that is sort of the modern interpretation of Genesis, and it was in the past sometimes interpreted that way, but there are definitely other interpretations than matter produced from nothing, from a complete lack of matter. That's sort of an idea or an interpretation of Genesis that's sort of one interpretation of many.
Well, that's very insightful. Well, y'all have a great show, and thanks a lot, and I'll continue watching and hope other callers call in.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep, y'all have a great day.
We'll see you later. And as a reminder again, any atheist-friendly people, we're going to dinner after the program at Threadgills on Riverside. You're welcome to join us, and we'll keep the phone number up or put it back up again in a few minutes for those of you wanting to call in. We've got, is it Anthony?
Yes.
How you doing?
Okay, how's it going? I have a question for you. You said that you was on your way to seminary and you started finding information out that discouraged you or changed your mind about Christ. Now, what document did you study? Atheism?
Atheism isn't a document.
No, I'm saying that's the doctrine of atheists that you study.
There's no doctrine to atheism.
Well, you have a certain belief, right? Atheists have a certain belief, right?
Well, atheism is a lack of. It's essentially a singular answer to a singular question. Theism is the belief in a god or gods, and atheism is a lack of belief in a god.
Right. So basically, you study something to realize that you believe nothing. Basically. No,
not that I believe nothing. I believe in a great deal of things. I mean, I'm not. I know you're trying to get to a point.
Yeah, I'm going to try to help. I think he's just simply asking, what did you find on the way through your study that made you sort of change your mind about your faith in God? Is that correct? Is that
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there was a great many things. I started because I wanted to be able to answer difficult questions that come up, and there's a brand of Christian philosophy called apologetics, where they're explaining, biblical answers and also origins. And I had begun to have, some doubts as to the reliability thing, and wanted to shore that up. And one of the things that started was my uncle had given me a book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell.
Right.
Which is, if you're a believing Christian or a mostly believing Christians, that's a great book to really shore up your belief. It's only when you start going in to try and evaluate the evidence that Josh presents and the arguments that he makes with regard to reality, and actually consider them further, that you start to find that they break down. That was part of the process. There was also a lot of philosophical and scientific investigation about the nature of God. How do we define what we know?
Right.
What reason is there? And it kind of got to the point where, after considering so many things, and it's, by the way, it's an investigation, it's a research project that I never stop. I still, study as much as I can about it, as many things I get my hands on.
I know. I understand what you're saying, but my thing is, you said you was a Christian. See, here's the thing. When I became a Christian, I knew nothing about Christianity. I was just like anybody else, wanted to live my life in a way that wasn't pleasing to God as well. It's only when you get that new birth. See, I think where atheists are missing the point is that they think that people take information.
What happened?
They think that people take information from other Christians, and that's how they, I guess, maybe strengthen their faith. But I had an experience. That's something that happened to me, and I know you have other callers. So I won't bore you with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
But what happens a lot of time, I think that what happens is the reason why a lot of people turn to atheism and other religions, because they're not satisfied. They see someone who confessed to be a Christian, and then they see that these people are doing certain things, so they assume that all Christians are this way or believe this way or that way. Now, I want to know, how many Christians do you people actually really know? I'm not talking about somebody that goes to church or somebody that's trying to do good. I'm talking about truly born-again Christian. How many of them do you actually know?
Well, if you're not going to use the criteria of they go to church and try to be a good person,
right.
How would I give me a definition then of what's a Christian?
Okay, a Christian. Think about it. Okay, a Christian. See, you would be a fool to place your trust in a Christianity. See what I'm saying? You'd be a fool to place your trust in Christianity. See, Christ. See, when Christ came and died, he died for all mankind. He didn't just. Christ never said trust in Christianity. He said he's the way, the truth, and the life. Now, what fault have you ever found in Jesus Christ? See, that's what you have to tear down.
Are you asking what faults have I found in
Jesus Christ? Yes.
Okay. First of all, we don't know for sure that he lived, and there's significant debate about whether or not he was actually.
So you don't believe Jewish history then? Josephus, who wasn't a Christian, mentioned him.
The Josephus passage, the Testimonium Flavius, is at best partially a late 4th century interpolation.
Right. But what I'm saying, that you got people who weren't followers of Christ mentioning him.
Not a single 1st century historian.
Okay.
Corroborates the story, but that's right. That's irrelevant.
No, it's very relevant, because
it's irrelevant to me answering your question. So let me get to what I was saying real quick. There is a question as to the historicity, but even if you assume that this person existed, I don't find the Bible to be an accurate representation of what could have happened. And also, just looking at, let's say, the words that are attributed to Jesus in the New Testament really are his. Really are his words. Those are things he said. I find them, for example, going through the Sermon on the Mount, to be a collection of really bad advice. Take no thought for tomorrow. Trust God to provide everything. That's really bad life advice in general.
Right.
Why do you have a savings account? Why do you have a 401k and a retirement plan?
Right, but see, if you look at it in that narrow term, okay, let me give you an example. You work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I tell you, okay, look, we're going to do such and such tomorrow, but don't worry about money or whatever. But that's not saying don't disregard money. in that context, either way, you're taking a narrow view that don't worry about anything, just sit and wait, and God gonna do it. That's not what he's saying.
That is what the Bible
not
says.
What he's saying.
And in actuality, when somebody specifically comes up to Jesus and asks him, good master, what must I do to be saved? And of course, Jesus right off the bat says, why are you calling me good?
Right.
But then his reply is, keep the commandments. So there's nothing about believe in me, be born again, be baptized, nothing. It's keep the commandments. And the guy specifically asked which one, and Jesus answers with regard to, don't kill, don't steal, and honor thy father and mother.
Right.
And he says, these things I've done all my life. And then Jesus says, the only thing you're missing is to go sell all your stuff and follow me.
You know why he said that, though?
Yeah.
See, this is what happened when people that are not Christians trying to interpret the Bible. What he was saying this is what he was saying. He knew that rich man, his life was about money. That's what his life was about. And he knew that he could never have a true relationship with him unless he done that. It wasn't so much as him go sell. It wasn't so much as go sell everything, because there was a lot of people gave money, like the first, they gave money, but they wasn't followers.
I understand the parable that you're talking about.
And so what happens is, it wasn't so much as go sell all your money, but the guy, if you go back and you read earlier, see what happens is the guy, he was a rich man. Rich people don't like to part with their money. And so what he was saying was, in order for you to have a relationship with me, you're gonna have to do that. Sell it.
I understand that you can have an interpretation. I understand that you can have an interpretation which reduces that to metaphor. The point of that was that generally among Christians and among the doctrines of the religion, the way to salvation is based only on belief
in Christ, right?
But that's not the answer that Jesus gave in the Bible as to the way to salvation. And also in the book of James, James questions the doctrine of faith alone.
Right.
Can faith alone get me to heaven without works? And the point of all of that is that there are contradictions there, and not just contradictions as to whether or not a bat is a bird or not.
Right. But
there are real doctrinal contradictions.
No, it's not faith. No, it's not a contradiction. See, if you are a child of God, and you are a Christian, you're going to do works. You're going to do what Christ says.
You're coming with an ad hoc excuse saying that the real path is faith, and that if you're really faithful, your good works will show the faith. But that's not the complete nature of what's discussed in there.
Yes, it is. Jesus goes on. But I ain't gonna bog it down because I know you got other callers. But I want to ask this: what do y'all do about sin? What do y'all do about sin? Do y'all believe that sin exists?
I don't think I accept sin as a concept in the way that you're talking about it.
So how do you determine right and wrong?
I determine it based on the amount of harm versus benefit to me and to others.
What I'm saying is, that still doesn't give me a definition of how do you determine what's right or wrong. Because now, let me ask you this: if I disagree with you, am I right or wrong?
It depends on what we're talking about.
You're changing. Hang on. You're changing definitions there.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking her if I disagree with her.
You're changing definitions there because a minute ago you were talking about morally right or wrong, and in that last sentence you were talking about whether we considered you to be correct or incorrect. You cannot change right and wrong and correct and incorrect and try to make some kind of link there because it just doesn't work.
Let's talk about morally wrong. How do you determine what's morally wrong and what's morally right?
I feel that what is moral is a personal definition of what one accepts as decent behavior. My personal moral values have to do with not harming other people, not harming myself, not to try to do as little harm as possible and to try to benefit as much as possible.
So if I disagree with you, am I right or am I wrong morally? We're talking morally here.
Disagreeing with me is not morally right or wrong.
So there's no absolute then?
Well, it's not morally wrong for a person to disagree with me.
No, what I'm saying, but somebody has to be right. Do you believe child molestation is right?
No, because it's harmful.
No, but what I'm saying, if I disagree with you,
right?
Am I wrong or right?
From my point of view, if you felt that child molestation was morally correct, I would feel that you...
What I'm saying is, I said that, of course we know that, but what I'm saying is, I was trying to give the opposite opinion of what she's saying what's right, and I said if I disagree with her, it doesn't have to be child molestation, it could be anything, but what I'm saying is if I disagree with her, who's right?
No, because I said to me, morality is about your personal acceptance of what you consider to be right or wrong.
Right.
I can't dictate that to you.
So then there's no absolute according to you.
If there's an absolute that I think people have to believe or not believe, no. But now, will I intervene in an action that I believe is harmful? Yes.
So there's no right or wrong. I'm trying to get a clear picture.
Okay.
So you saying that if one person says something is wrong and some person says it's right, what standard do you use to determine who's right and who's wrong?
To me, that's not even irrelevant. It's not relevant who's right or wrong.
You're kidding me.
No, to me, the only thing that's relevant is somebody harming someone. I'm going to be honest with you here. If you and I'm not saying that you believe this, but just as the hypothetical, if you really did believe that child molestation was fine, I don't. And give me a second to qualify after I say this, because it's going to sound a little bit bad at first.
Okay.
I don't believe there's anything wrong with you believing that. Now, if you go out and start molesting children, I will do everything I can to lock you up because you're harming people. What you believe is your morality, and I don't care what you believe and what your morality is. What you do, I do have a great deal of care as to what you do, because if you start hurting people, I will join with other people to put you away.
The most significant thing is about this isn't necessarily what somebody's personal morals are. It's what the society and the groups and the different social structures get together and agree they are going to enact as laws, etc.
Right. What is healthy for the culture?
Okay. Well, the reason why I said that, I said it to say this. So then slavery must have been okay then.
Well, according to your religion...
No, the law.
According to your religion...
Not my religion, the law.
Jesus said servants obey their
said it was okay.
I'm going to put you on hold if you keep trying to talk over me. According to your religion, sir, slavery is allowed.
Yes.
In the Old Testament, not only is slavery endorsed, it specifically says who can be enslaved and who cannot be enslaved, and how you're supposed to go about marking them by holding their ear up to the door and driving a spike through it. It also talks about how much you're allowed to pay. If you go back in history when slavery was an issue in the United States, there were a great many of really down-home Christians who were very proud of the fact that their Bible supported slavery and that is what gives them the right to keep doing it. So, go ahead.
Okay, now, you just switched it. You said that once you get a group of people who says according to the law that is wrong, then that's what you do. Now, slavery was considered a law. Okay?
No, I didn't.
You have a conflict there.
Wait, I didn't say that anyway.
I thought that y'all think slavery was wrong.
No, wait, I didn't say that if the law supports it, that I automatically support it. What I said is that if somebody's harming people, I will get with other people to try to stop that.
Right, but what I was asking both of you guys was do you believe slavery was wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I don't support slavery.
This is what I'm trying to say. Then there was other people on the other aisle believe that slavery was okay.
Correct.
That's correct, and that's an example. That's an example of how two people can hold exclusive moral positions on something.
So who's right?
There's not a right or wrong.
You telling me slavery? There's no right or wrong.
There's a whether or not you agree with it.
Right, and I don't agree with it, and I would try to stop it.
Right, so who's right and who's wrong? So what I'm trying to get you to see is what standard are you using to this? You got to have a standard to use to determine what's right or wrong. You can't just say, I
use my own standard, and so do you, and so does everybody else.
Yeah.
And when you start associating with other people whose standards agree with yours, that's when you start making progress on issues.
I see that you guys are not going to answer that because
I think we've answered it several times.
Because the first thing when you say slavery, first thing you come out of your mouth was
I don't accept your proposition that there is an absolute right or wrong, independent of perspective of individuals.
You said there is or there isn't?
There is not.
You telling me? So in other words, then I guess child molestation isn't wrong. There is no absolute right.
If you're correct, there's no absolute in the way that you're trying to define it.
No, I'm just saying. I'm asking you. What's good.
My personal morality includes child molestation is wrong. That doesn't mean that is an absolute. That is my personal opinion on that particular issue.
So on that particular issue, there can be another side and nobody's wrong.
There can be another side, I think they're wrong, they think they're correct, and it's those of us who also agree as a group that person is wrong and that particular thing is a crime against another person, and we are going to enact laws to punish on behalf of that. That's where it comes into play.
But I think also the big point here is that I would not endorse arresting somebody for thinking child molesting was correct.
No, I'm not saying thinking it. I'm saying there are people out there. The reason why I asked this question, you guys, because there are people out there that actually believe that. You know, there are people out there that actually believe that. That's why we're having so much problem now today with all this. And that's why I asked you, I started my question off by asking, do y'all believe in sin? See, that's why, because to me, that's sin.
Well, maybe I should have asked you, how do you define sin?
I think
anything that's contrary to the will of God.
Okay, then I can't believe in sin because I don't believe in God. So we have an issue right there.
Right. And the thing is, I know y'all got other color, but I would just say this, is that, that it's like this. One day, you like, it's okay to have your little program and stuff and tell people about atheism, and that's fine.
Thanks.
But, and like I said, I admire what you guys are doing, but one day you're going to stand before God, and you know, all that trying to be separated from God, He's going to give you your wish. You will be separated from Him forever. And like I say, and I will say that there are a lot of Christians, and I agree with you, there are a lot of people who confess to be Christians. You got to understand that word confess to be Christians. And they do things which are not Christianity, which are not Christ-like. And so some people look at that and say, oh, man, they say they're Christians and they live in this way. The Bible calls them hypocrites. Bible calls them hypocrites. Now, see, y'all, I don't understand why I never hear y'all mention people who are Christians who are doing good things. Every time y'all mention a Christian, it's somebody who either taking money or doing something stealing or something immoral. But I don't know. I apologize if
I said good power to the guy that's building the floating zoo, Noah's Ark. I said good more power to him.
You was just being sarcastic.
No, really, more power to him. I mean,
that's not Christ-like.
And as an example,
here's
an example of the problem. I can say good things about Christians, but the Christians who I choose to point out and say he's doing a good thing, odds are you'd probably think they're not true Christians. If I point out the Reverend Barry Lynn, who is actively working for separation church and state, and
Benny Hinn, or I didn't hear you. Benny Hinn?
No.
I thought you said Benny Hinn or Benny Hinn. I couldn't hear you.
The name.
Barry Lynn.
Mary Lynn?
Barry.
Barry Lynn?
Barrylynn.
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear you. Okay.
I've forgotten the name of his organization. But anyway, who's actively working for this on behalf of the Separation Church and State, and I'll applaud him all day long for his actions there. And if I see other people who profess to be Christians doing good things, and that's the important thing, because from my point of view, I have no way of identifying who's a true Christian and who isn't.
Right.
All I can do is say this person claims to be a Christian, I'm going to take them at their word, because none of you can provide an explanation which allows anybody else to define what is or isn't a true Christian.
Well, I sure would like to invite you to there are a lot of Christians I know that are actually doing things, but it's just unfortunately the ones that are quote unquote confess to be Christians that do bad, they unfortunately get all the spotlight. But there are a lot of Christians out there that are doing good things, going and visit people who got AIDS and sick and visiting.
Right, and I don't think that religion is required for any of that. There's not a single positive social benefit of religion which can be demonstrated to be exclusive to religion. You can go feed the poor, you can help the ill and injured, you can do all of that without being any kind of religion.
You said somebody can be a Christian without being affiliated with any religion?
No. I said you can do all of those kinds of positive things. You can feed the poor and help the needy and do all that without religion at all. So when somebody says Joe Blow is a Christian and he's over here helping these AIDS victims, good for him, but I don't see that has anything to do with his Christianity.
I agree with you in that respect that you don't have to be a Christian to do those things.
Right.
Where it actually gets to is that when you die.
Well, when I die, I believe that nothing significant is going to happen. I'm going to cease to exist. If in fact I'm wrong.
So what happens to the life that's in your body when you die? What happens to that particular life?
Where does a candle go when it's blown out?
Well, see, that's my point. Y'all have never met anybody who have died and went, or as you say, into matter or whatever you were saying. I mean, that is not found. That's not found. It's like, that's a fairy tale. That's a fairy tale for grown-ups. Now, that's really a fairy tale for grown-ups.
What's a fairy tale for grown-ups?
That you die, and I heard her mention something about when you die, that energy in your body just, I guess, goes and something.
No, I'm sorry, that's not a fairy tale. That's science. And not to be rude, but we're going to go ahead and let you go because there's other callers that have been on hold for a while. You're welcome to call back. Thanks for calling. If you have any other comments or questions, you can email tv@atheist-community.org, and you're welcome to call back and tune in again next week as well. We got, is it Paul?
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I am all right. Speaking as one of the other callers, it's nice to, I just want to say I like your show. I'm curious. I've been kind of, I guess, a non-believer for maybe about 6 years. Grew up in a Catholic family. And I kind of had a hard time qualifying my beliefs because I kind of based it on the very narrow strict U.S. dictionary definitions of atheist versus agnostic versus Christian. If you think about it, the definitions we're given are very strict. And over time, as I've done more research into it, I've kind of discovered that there are different theories of atheism and agnosticism, and I kind of fit. I realized that I fit into both. I fit into a broad.
That's fine. You can be an atheist agnostic.
Yeah, we've actually talked about that before, about how in the strictest sense of the definitions of the words, they're not mutually exclusive at all.
Yes.
The only way
they're not.
The only way you get that mutually exclusive thing is if you're working with just Huxleyan agnosticism, which you might want to put a capital A on, which is a position that God is unknown and unknowable, or I'm not going to take a position.
That's called strong agnosticism.
Right.
Am I correct? Okay. Well, what basically my question was, and I know you two just can't speak for all the ACA, but I was kind of wondering why you two maybe, why when they're so similar, why, for example, is it called the atheist experience? And I guess this is only the second time I've watched the show. I actually called in both times. Both times had to wait on hold like 15 minutes. This is the person before me, but yeah, it happens. And I really admire you guys for. I admire you for being willing to sit and listen and refute those arguments as opposed to taking the Bill O'Reilly approach. Anyway, I just kind of wondered why it's the atheist experience as opposed to the agnostic experience, I'm just curious. That's all I'm asking. And maybe you could say your personal reasons for why you are atheist or not agnostics.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Or both.
I'll just say this. Atheism is lack of belief in God. Basically being able to say, I don't believe in God, that I'm fine labeling that atheism. Are you okay with, would you accept that as a fair label?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
Well, in the same regard, I don't believe in leprechauns. You know what I mean?
Yes, actually I do.
So it's, to me, if I don't believe in God and defining lack of belief in God as atheism, that's what I would call an atheist. And I didn't name the show, and I wasn't around when they named the show, so I can't say if that, why they chose that or if there was any discussion about agnosticism. As far as I know, it's always been the atheist community of Austin, so I assume they just named it for the group.
Yeah.
But, I guess, what would be your thoughts on including agnosticism in that? What would be your logic on that?
I don't know. I wasn't really trying to say, change the name of the organization. Not that you have the power to, but I guess I'm gesturing at the TV, by the way. What I was going to say is one of the things is, for example, there's contentions that when you're born, there are contentions between different theorists that when you're born, you're an atheist. And then some say atheist means without theism, so you have to experience theism before you can reject it. So I guess that's another. What I'm asking is, if you're an atheist, what kind of concept of atheism? That's another thing I'm asking. What kind of concept of atheism do you embrace? There's broad and there's narrow.
You can redefine atheism. Some people go for the strong atheism versus weak atheism, where strong atheism is simply the lack of belief in a God, weak atheism is the lack of belief in a God, and strong atheism is actively asserting that there is no God. And I tend to view strong atheism as I'm not coming up with the right word.
I don't know, but I would just as easily say there's no God as there's no leprechauns.
Yeah. It depends on how you're actually going to look at strong atheism. If there's somebody who's adamantly saying there's no God, no possibility of God, there could never be a God, whatever, that to me requires a level of knowledge which is logically inconsistent with the claims they're making. But it's okay, as Tracie pointed out, for me to say there are no leprechauns. Because what I'm really saying is I don't have any reason at all to believe that there are leprechauns. And there's so little reason to believe that it's as near to absolute as you might as well just call it absolute. So in that sense, I don't have a problem with some strong atheist claims. And we had before gone through the distinction of having Gnostic theist, agnostic theist, Gnostic atheist, agnostic atheist. The atheist community of Austin, I wasn't around when they named it or the show. And by the way, there's a Y at the end of my name. I wasn't around when they named the organization or the show. I could have adopted a mantle, after abandoning my religious beliefs. I could have just said, well, I'm agnostic. I don't, because I find that conveys a perspective or an impression upon people which isn't consistent with what my actual position is. A lot of people think, you're an agnostic. Oh, well, you're just not really taking a position on it or whatever else.
Yes.
No, I'm actively saying that I don't have any reason and have seen no evidence which would cause me to believe in a God. And therefore, the best description of what I actually am is an atheist. Now, I also think that it's worthwhile for those of us who, there are, in addition to strong and weak, there's implied atheist, or which is where you get the babies who are born don't have an opinion on God or don't actively accept God, and therefore they are implied atheists. I'm in a more of a position of a rational atheist, where I have considered the questions surrounding God and gods and supernatural claims, and rejected them because there's insufficient evidence. There's no good reason to believe it. And I think it's worthwhile for other atheists who share similar beliefs to actively adopt that mantle of atheist and make sure that the word's getting out to the public through the TV show, articles, whatever, that atheism, if you look in the American Heritage Dictionary, the last entry under atheist or atheism is immorality. That's in the dictionary as a definition for atheism. And it drives me so crazy to see that sort of slander in a dictionary, that I'm going to proudly proclaim I'm an atheist left and right to anybody who wants to know, without actually going around and randomly shoving it in people's faces, because it's important for people to know that we're just like everybody else. We just don't happen to believe in a God.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming on TV and bravely wielding Occam's razor. That's always that's always appreciated. And Disneyland is in California, not Florida, so the aliens kind of...
Disney World, I should have said. Disney World. Okay.
I had to let that...
thank you.
I had to get that out. Yeah. Anyway, you guys show some bravery for someone who lived a long time in a small conservative town in Texas, like I'm not used to this, came here to school, and suddenly, wow, atheist on TV. It's really
You should go to dinner then.
Yeah.
I don't even have a car. I'm in college.
Well...
Starving
I can't afford a dinner. You bought my dinner. Oh, yeah.
Well, when you do get transportation down, you and any other atheist or atheist-friendly people, welcome to join us at Threadgills after the program. We're off at 6 o'clock and normally get there between 6:30 and 6:45. It's on Riverside between Congress and First.
Chris gets the Patient Caller Award.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to move on because there's another caller who has been actually a little more patient than you had to be.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot for calling, Paul. And Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for waiting.
I was calling about, I originally called to talk about just common sense, which seems like a lot of people nowadays are kind of lacking. And listening to some of the callers before, it became even more apparent how lacking it really is.
How uncommon common sense is?
Well, the one guy a couple callers ago, I don't know, it took a while for you guys to talk to him because he wouldn't listen to your answer or whatever. What is, he like says we're right, and how do you judge your morality and all? And I've heard this before from other people too, calling in and stuff, and like, so what's wrong with common sense? Like, why can't you just use that to figure out how to, to do something positive or right? Or
I'd rather you didn't kill me, so I think it's probably likely that you'd rather I didn't kill you, so let's just agree not to kill each other, and we'll form a little group of people who don't like to kill each other, and anybody who tries to break that rule, we'll segregate them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it seems kind of weird to me. It's the same thing with the question that I think two people I've heard call in kept asking, where do you go when you die? Well, I've been to funerals. I've been to open casket funerals, and the body's sitting right there, dead as hell. It's not like the body went anywhere or anything. And the guy, two callers ago, said something about it's a grown-up fairy tale.
Yeah.
Well, isn't thinking that there's like this thing within you, a soul that's going to go to some place? Isn't that more of a fairy tale than, for instance, the woman there talking about energy, does the guy eat food? It's sort of a demonstration of what's going to happen to all of us, isn't it?
I was ready to jump all over that adult fairy tale line and just tap dance, but Tracy wanted me to be nice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's an old saying that is, he who will not answer to the rudder will answer to the rocks. And if you need, it doesn't take long to figure out what works and what doesn't work in life. Because you answer to the rocks a couple times and you start paying attention to the rudder, you start thinking about your actions and about the impact of your actions, and then you start being a little more careful about how you behave.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, I remember when I was a kid and they were building a church, a Bible church down the street from my house, and my parents were Catholic up until I was 5 years old, and they went to do this Bible study, and everybody who did the Bible study, including even the priest, quit the church. And it was kind of interesting, but when these people started building this church, and I was, of course, a teenager. I wasn't the nicest guy in the world or whatever, kind of a juvenile delinquent, but I remember the guy asking me, he says, when you're standing there at the gates of heaven and God asks you, why should I let you in? What are you going to say? And the line was, I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Well, it just seems strange to me that that they're kind of saying, well, that's all you got to do is say that. It doesn't matter how you behaved on earth, because Jesus died for you being a piece of crap. So go ahead and be a piece of crap. Just accept him as your Savior, and you'll go to heaven. Like, that's just the answer. It's like this kind of a ridiculous answer to, your fear about dying or whatever. But what about life while you're here? Like, you waste your time just going, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And, it's the same thing with, like doing the right thing or doing things for other people. And the guy said, there are plenty of religions that go out and soup kitchens and all that. But, that's really a humanist effort.
Yeah.
And there are humanist, publications that talk about stuff like that. I read one time there was a guy in there, he was a Vietnam War vet, and the old saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. He was like, bullcrap. When he was in Vietnam, he realized that everybody in a foxhole praying were the people dying, that it was people who didn't waste their time praying, that actually took action were the ones that were actually had a shot at, like, making it through. And so, I don't know.
I wasn't an atheist at the time.
I'm a strong atheist because I do not, to me, it's anybody can say anything to me about God and stuff, but it's all a human thing. There's no, like, why would I go, well, I don't know if there's a God or not. It's not for me to say. It's like, well, I can definitely say there's no God if somebody's telling me there is, because it's a human idea. It's not, my dog doesn't talk about God. I don't know if you ever saw it was Tommy, the movie Tommy, or it started out as a record or whatever.
Rock opera from the Who.
In it, they talk about that exact thing. A blind, deaf, and dumb person has no way of knowing about God because they've never been told God, they've never seen, you know what I mean? And so, how are they supposed to be saved, in the end? And I don't know, to me it's just so obvious. Like, if you're a good person, whether or not I'm right about God won't even matter in the end.
Yeah,
as long as I live my life right, what difference does it make, And I don't care if the guy's an atheist or not. Why do they care so much about what I believe and what I think? What difference does it make to them? If that works for them, fine. But it doesn't mean it has to work for me or I have to believe what they believe.
Right.
And that's sort of what I find the most offensive about that kind of, well, you have to believe what I believe. I'm like, no, you can believe in God all you want. You can talk about Jesus, whatever. But you know what? Don't act like I have to. I'm not pushing my ideas on you. Don't push yours on me.
Yeah, and that's a really good point there, Chris, that the idea that I don't mind somebody believing in God, and I don't even mind them saying that they wished I believe in God, but I do mind when they try to take legislation and control my behavior and try to make me live their Christian lifestyle or make me do things I don't want to do because they believe in God and they believe this is what they want to do, so then Tracie has to do it too. I agree. I find that wholly offensive.
Well, the only other thing I'll say is I was talking to somebody last week, and the thing of God came up, and they believe in God. And the reason was, what they said was, that so many people for so long have talked about it, going back. And it's like, yeah, but, those same people that came up with all that probably never thought a man would walk on the moon either. So, I mean, come on, they didn't know, they didn't have electricity, it's like we've come a long way, and really, I can understand how in, a much different time. Religion probably served a purpose, but now it really seems to me that the purpose is over. Like, we have so much going on in the world.
You have outlived your usefulness. It is time for you to die.
Well, thanks very much.
What's that?
I said thanks very much for your call. You have a lot of energy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just, I see so much shit going wrong in the world, and usually it's like there's always, like, it was these Muslims or these Christians or whatever, and I go, when will we realize that the usefulness of this, fairy tale is done with, and we need to move on and start thinking about surviving, not, what's going to happen to us when we die. So,
yeah, I definitely like to look forward to that time. Thanks a lot, Chris, for calling.
Kendal is next.
Yep. We've got, is it Kendal?
That's correct. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Kendal, how you doing?
Tracy, I really like that you brought up Joseph Campbell, by the way.
Oh, good.
I was
Another fan.
I was trying to get my wife to watch that. She goes, that's right. It's the only religion that thinks everything's evil and everything else is in accordance with nature. And
yeah.
I said, that sounds kind of weird, but one of my favorite sayings is by Ernst Stallinger. He says, the road to belief is short and easy. The road to knowledge is long and difficult and hard. So if you question things, that's very, very brave. If you just believe things without some kind of merit. I mean, there was a lot of talk about good and evil, right and wrong, up and down, or whatever. So I was listening to this, and I was very interested. Have you ever seen the original version of Bedazzled with Dudley Moore?
With Dudley Moore, yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
That, since it was, I think it was either the late 60s, early 70s, that's what actually turned me around in my teens, because they said, Peter Cook, as the devil, says, okay, let me show you my position. I'm going to get up here and sit on this mailbox and start worshiping me. Well, what do you want me to do? Well, just say something nice and personal. Well, you're beautiful, you're magnificent, you're omniscient. Now praise me for some of my accomplishments. Water, that's a real good one. Sex, that's excellent. He goes, but make it more personal. And Dudley Moore says, I'm getting really, really tired. Can we change positions for a while? And the devil says, that's exactly my point. And I like that because to me that means, because I've talked to Christians and you do the Socratic dialogue by saying things like, okay, so God knows everything that's going to happen and he's responsible for creating everything. Yes. So he created the devil. Yes. And he knew the devil was going to try to perform as an equal and cast him into the fiery realms of hell. Follow me so far?
Yeah.
I think it was either Ashley or Matt that was saying, if I ever met this God, I'd like to have a long talk with him because he's a sick bastard. He plays some pretty bizarre games. And in other words, creating all the rules and everything, knowing in advance what's going to happen, and then getting mad about it.
Yeah.
Because if you read the Bible, and God became angry.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflict in I've had discussions recently with regard to determinism and fatalism when you have an omniscient being who knows potentially the future and every action, but also selected the reality in the sense of creation. If you have that kind of model, do you actually have any free will? And regardless of whether or not you have free will from your perspective, etc., how could you possibly be punished for taking actions which were known and pre-selected for you, even if you had the illusion of selection? And, so many Christians, I mentioned this not too long ago, have done this. Well, God can't present himself to us because that would violate our free will. If we knew for sure that he existed, we couldn't possibly choose not to worship him. Bull. That's exactly what Satan did in their own book. He knew absolutely, according to their book, that God existed, and he still chose another path. So the idea that God can't demonstrate himself for fear of violating our free will is nonsense. And that argument just makes me giggle almost now when I hear it.
Well, I like your comment about dragons as well. Okay, we know that there's dogs. We're not too certain about dragons, so
yeah,
playing that wild card with people. Okay, I believe in the mighty Thor. Well, no, because he's not Jesus. Oh, no. I believe in Thor.
Yeah, my God or my particular belief, which happens to feel really good to me, is compartmentalized away in a box that is separate from all other observations in the reality. So.
And, so there could be dragons, but they're invisible.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks,
you, Tracy.
guys.
I really enjoyed your show.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
And it's Jessica.
Yes, how are y'all doing today?
Good. How you doing?
I'm going to be as PC, politically correct as possible.
All right.
I want to address.
If you have to.
Okay. I want to address the African American man that called a few calls back. Okay. I am also half African American, black, whatever you want to call it, Scottish, Irish. Okay. I'm going to be quite honest with y'all. Y'all being both Caucasians probably don't know this, but black people, especially in America, are very religious and not enlightened, okay? I'm going to be honest. If they thought about slavery, and when my father's ancestors were on the Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria, and were slaves and were the Atlantic slave trade came over here, they used the masters and whoever, the people, I'm trying to say they used the Bible to enslave us mentally. They used what it says in the Bible as far as slavery. They used, obey your master to justify that. And I just want to address any black person in Austin listening to this. You really need to enlighten yourself and keep up. You know?
In fairness, and I don't mean to just divert for the heck of it. I don't think that, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that the race is an issue at all. I think there are a great many people who, regardless of their race or anything else, really need to enlighten themselves. And it's not some kind of difficult, let me go off and meditate and think about this for hours. It's really simple stuff. Some of it is basic education, which we've utterly failed to evidently give to kids in America now.
Well, yes, but I have black friends that are from Britain, and their whole philosophy and logic is totally different than, say, the black people here in America. And
there's a culture that they're trying to
whites,
escape.
though, even the whites in Britain tend to be less religious.
Oh, yes.
So it seems to be here.
Yeah, it seems to be like a cultural,
thing,
geographic thing.
We're just a little dumbed down here. But I just want to address that to, if the black man is listening or any black people listening, maybe take some Logic 101 in college. Maybe that would be great. So that's all I wanted to say. Y'all take care.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I know that's an interesting topic for conversation at another time, I guess. But in general, we really need to amp up the education in America, especially. There's obviously the fight between the intelligent design crew and trying to undermine evolutionary theory and science teaching in general.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we need to work harder at is teaching people. I don't want to use the phrase "how to think," but that seems to
critical thinking is not really taught.
Yeah.
Could do better.
So we got like less than a minute left. The email address is up there on your screen, tv@atheist-community.org. If you didn't get through on the phone this week, or if you didn't want to, you're free to email and we'll read that. As a reminder, we'll be going to dinner after the show at Threadgill's on Riverside. Any atheist or atheist-friendly people are welcome to join us. You can visit the atheist-community.org website, www.atheist-community.org, for more information about our various events throughout the week. Thanks, Tracy, so much for coming in and filling in on short notice. And we'll see you all again next week. Thanks for tuning in.